public is watching us, they do still respect us. If you look at the Pew Research and the Gallup polls, law enforcement is a trusted profession.
Welcome to Black and Blue, the podcast that's just for you. We bring solutions to everyday problems. We are here to humanize the badge. By interviewing first responders and discussing their trainings, experiences, and publications. Black and Blue airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in.
Sure. So I teach cops how to avoid, right? So it's not necessarily just that I defend cops. I teach cops to defend a reasonable use of force. Because, I mean, let's be honest, we've seen cops not use reasonable force.
Yeah.
But there's a question as to what a citizen may think is reasonable versus what my training and experience thinks is reasonable, right? I was just teaching a class a little while ago over in North Las Vegas, and we were talking about excited delirium.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a lot of studies on what's called prone restraint. And the science says that prone restraint, putting your knee on someone's back, doesn't kill them. But that's what the science says. Danny King would tell you, this is what the science says, but don't keep your knee in their back, right? It's just one of those things that it's just problematic. And oftentimes, or sometimes, it's not necessary. So if it's not necessary, roll them over and sit them up. Because we're in a post-fact world where the facts necessarily don't matter. Right. So it's not, like I said, I teach guys how to avoid allegations of excessive force, unreasonable force, just things that they can do to avoid the appearance of it, as well as how to explain their actions. It's cut and dry because you'll have someone a police officer who is very anxious in their appearance, who may do one thing versus a SWAT officer, on the other hand, who's used to operating in highly stressful circumstances, and so they won't necessarily react the same way that the other officer would. Right. For the most part, am I seeing on video what you're saying has occurred? Sometimes it'll be there. Most of the time it'll be there, but sometimes. And then you just clip through the rest of the report. Is this within policy? Is this within procedure? As an example, in a lot of agencies, they've precluded the use of the drive stun. Or the contact taser, where you take the taser, you put it against someone's skin, without deploying it. Well, that in my agency, we couldn't do that.
Okay.
So you would have a policy violation, but it's completely reasonable in the law. It's just that our agency decides that, hey, we're not going to do that for a variety of reasons. So you can have something that's a policy violation and still be completely constitutional. So in my role, what am I looking for? Am I looking for policy compliance? Am I looking for constitutional compliance? Okay, well, this is out of policy, but completely constitutional. And so you just go through, you read the report, you read witness statements, you look at the surveillance and so on and so forth. And it gives you a pretty good idea of listen, is this person resisting? Once they stopped resisting, did they get taken into custody, or were there additional strikes? Were those strikes within reason or not? And then ultimately you'll start to get a picture, and then you do that over and over and over again. And sometimes when you crack open those reports and those videos and you start looking at them, it's not reasonable. From beginning to end, it's just not reasonable. De-escalation is an example. De-escalation to me and you means that we have a chance to maybe give this person some space. Maybe we have the time to talk, but you know when it's time to de-escalate and when it's time to not de-escalate, right? Or when it's, I should say, escalate. But you know those things. Well, the state of Nevada wrote it into the law that you must de-escalate. That's a horrible idea. If you've got done robbing a bank and running from the cops and crashing the car, and I come along with my dog and find you hiding in a bush, having done all these violent felonies, do you expect me to de-escalate? And not only should I not de-escalate, I will tell you that having the dog in your face, me yelling at you or giving you clear and concise orders, is the thing that's incredibly effective. Right. So we see all these laws that are put in place all across the country that simply don't make sense. Like sitting still and laying down. I can do that like a champ all day, every day, right? So I don't have to be in the mix of things. I don't have to be fixing cars and doing all those other things. If I get bored, man, I bought a $15,000 commercial 16 needle embroidery machine. I'll just fire that thing up and sew some nonsense and then go, okay, cool, I'm good. The public is watching us. They do still respect us. If you look at the Pew Research and the Gallup polls, law enforcement is a trusted profession. And quite honestly, we've gotten away from doing law enforcement. Where I was speaking with Travis Yates, who was on your show not too long ago, when you ask law enforcement officers or chiefs what their job is, oftentimes one of the top things that they talk about isn't even law enforcement. Our country is out of control, and I think a lot of people understand that. I'm working on a website called Police Basics, where the idea is to explain to the public why police do what they do, because we do not explain that almost at all. There's a reason why we do most of the things that we do. And, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Use of force oftentimes is written into the law. It's not written into the law because cops gratuitously used violence or force. Use of force is written into the law because as a citizen, when I call 911 or I call a person in as being suspicious, I understand that they are going to encounter people who are violent or want to assault them. The founding fathers of this country understood that. So when they wrote the Constitution, or better yet, the Bill of Rights, they wrote in there that the government can only reasonably seize people. They understood that we were going to seize them, but it just has to be reasonable. And so use of force isn't in the law because it's in the law. It's because we are intentionally placing our fellow citizens into hazardous, dangerous, unknown circumstances. And when you explain that to people, they go, when you comply with the police officer, you're giving him just a few more seconds to figure out what's going on, right? And when we explain this to people, it's not that the citizens don't want to know. It's that quite the opposite. They do want to know. They do want to know why law enforcement does what it does. And so if we as law enforcement officers are just honest with our citizens and talk about why we do what we do, what we're trained for, what we're not trained for, a lot of times people would go, okay, because as an American, I don't think we can continue on the course that we're on, right? This is not a country that I recognize as someone that's being born in the 70s. And I come from the other side of the tracks, and I'll tell you that things aren't better on any side of the tracks, right? We're at a point in our country where as a nation, we have to decide where we're at.